Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into all this source material you shared about artificial intelligence and its impact on productivity.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Reports, research, projections.
It really isn't just about faster spreadsheets, is it? Seems like a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
Work, the economy, maybe even how we define, being productive.
Absolutely, it's a transformation.
So our mission basically is to cut through the noise, find the key takeaways for you on AI's capabilities, this changing idea of productivity and, what it all means.
And what really jumps out, I think, is how AI isn't just automating simple stuff anymore. The sources really hammer this home AI systems are beating human performance consistently.
On complex cognitive tasks too, right? Not just calculation.
Exactly. We're talking really complex things.
Rick, what were some of the examples? The sources had some pretty eye-popping ones.
Yeah, get this. Passing the uniform bar exam, and not just passing, but scoring in the top 10%. Or getting 90% on the U.S. medical licensing exam. Then there's competition-level math, PhD-level science questions, coding benchmarks.
Right. So models like GPT-4, they're showing huge improvements. And not just text. You mentioned multimodal stuff like the MMMU benchmark.
Yeah, that's key. It's about understanding and reasoning across text, images, other data types altogether. It's moving beyond just information retrieval.
Which points towards that idea of agentic systems the sources mentioned.
Yeah.
AI that can learn and act more autonomously.
Sort of like a potential digital worker, yeah. But, and this is crucial, the sources are clear about the limits.
The hallucinations where it just makes stuff up.
Right. Plausible but wrong information. And the big one, the alignment problem. Making sure these powerful systems actually do what we intend them to do, ethically and safely, that's still a huge challenge.
Okay, so huge capabilities but real challenges. Now, how does this connect to the economy? The numbers in the sources are, frankly, staggering.
They really are. We're potentially looking at generative AI alone adding between $2.6 and $4.4 trillion annually to the global economy.
Trillion, wow. And big labor productivity boosts too, like 15% or more.
That's what some projections suggest. But here's where it gets really interesting, and the sources highlight this concept. The productivity J-curve.
The J-curve, what's that exactly?
Well, the idea is, like with past big technologies, you first have this big investment phase, redesigning workflows, new data systems, training people.
Yeah.
And all that investment might actually hide the productivity gains initially. It could even look like productivity is flat, or maybe even dips slightly before you see this big upward surge, like the letter J.
Ah, I see. So just looking at current economic numbers might be misleading. We might be in that initial dip or flat part.
Could be. And tied to that, the very idea of what productivity is seems to be evolving.
Right. Not just output per hour anymore.
Exactly. The sources talk about intangible value, innovation quality, and this concept of super agency.
Super agency, like AI boosting human potential.
Precisely. Letting us achieve things we couldn't before. It's significant enough that even economic standards are changing. Data is being recognized as a fixed asset now in the 2025 S&A update.
That's a big shift in thinking. Though the sources also mention AI might increase market concentration in some areas.
Yeah, especially in data-heavy sectors. But it's probably not across the board.
Okay, so jobs. What's the story there? Augmentation seems to be the main theme in the sources, right?
Yeah.
Human-AI collaboration.
That's the dominant narrative. AI as a co-pilot in nursing, teaching, coding, design, freeing people up for higher value tasks, enabling that super agency we talked about.
But there is displacement expected, too.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned, potentially over 20% of occupations seeing disruption, especially entry-level white-collar stuff.
Yes, some displacement seems likely. But the sources also point to new jobs being created. AI trainers, ethics officers, people managing the human-AI interaction.
So for people listening, the takeaway is really about skills, focusing on the human stuff.
Absolutely. Critical thinking, emotional intelligence, creativity, adaptability, being ready for lifelong learning is key. And of course, AI literacy. You need to know how to work with these tools effectively.
It sounds complex, though. Like, AI might help lower-skilled workers more, but maybe squeeze wages for experienced people if their routine tasks get automated?
That's a potential dynamic the sources raise. Yeah, it's definitely nuanced.
And beyond work, what about the broader societal ripples? There's the well-being aspect.
Right. The sources call it a double-edged sword. AI could increase engagement, make work more interesting maybe, but also potentially lead to alienation, stress, or challenges to our sense of identity tied to our jobs.
And the ethical side is huge. Bias in algorithms. The black box problem.
Yeah, major concerns. If the AI learns from biased data, it can perpetuate unfairness. And if we don't know why it made a decision, accountability becomes really difficult.
Are we getting anywhere with governance? I saw mentions of the EU AI Act, NIST framework.
Frameworks are emerging, definitely. But the sources also note that, only a pretty small percentage of companies actually have formal AI governance in place yet.
And then there's the whole geopolitical angle.
Yeah.
The US-China AI Cold War.
Right, that competition creates tension. You have this push for national advantage versus the clear need for global cooperation on safety and ethics standards.
Okay, so pulling this all together, charting the path forward, what do the sources suggest? For individuals, it's that lifelong learning human skills focus.
Definitely. And for organizations, agility is key. Redesigning how work gets done to really leverage that human AI synergy.
And it's not just about the tech itself failing, right? The sources mentioned projects going wrong because of other factors.
Exactly. Things like unclear goals or just not involving humans enough in the design and rollout, like some of those troubled chatbot examples. The sources mentioned McDonald's, Air Canada, where the tech existed, but the implementation or oversight wasn't quite right.
So the human element is critical even in tech deployment.
Yeah.
And for governments.
Big role there. Reforming education for future skills, strengthening safety nets, UBI even gets discussed in some sources, plus developing agile ethical rules and fostering international cooperation despite the tensions.
So, wrapping up, AI is obviously a massive inflection point. It's set to fundamentally change productivity, society, everything. But the key thing from these sources seems to be that the outcome isn't set in stone.
Not at all. The tech's moving fast, but how it impacts us depends on the choices we make now.
As individuals learning, as companies adapting, as societies setting the rules, the potential is huge. It might even force us to rethink what productivity or contribution even means beyond just the 9 to 5.
It really could.
So in thinking about everything we've just unpacked, what stands out to you as maybe the single biggest opportunity or perhaps the biggest challenge from all this?